Hey everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. Really great to have you. So again, welcome to this webinar hosted by Croissant. I'm Victoria, part of the Croissant team. I'm tuning in here from the UK, from up in Peterborough. Really lovely to have you here today. You're very welcome. I'm really excited to introduce Zoltan Szalas, our CEO and co-founder, as well as Stephanie Oliveros. Stephanie is an AI strategist, founder, and university lecturer based in Barcelona. She's the CEO of Just Lyra AI, which is a platform that uses transparent, evidence-based algorithms to match women to tech jobs. Stephanie also advises organizations on AI adoption and is a TEDx keynote speaker. So very welcome, Stephanie. Over the next 30 minutes, we are going to be discussing what it takes to build an AI mindset in the business and how that can help people and teams stay effective across a variety of AI tools and platforms. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So as questions come up, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end if we can. The session's being recorded and we can share that with you afterwards as well. And with that, welcome Stephanie and Zoltan. And Zoltan, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Victoria. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. AI, as you guys heard, it is everywhere. I think I heard two 10-year-olds arguing over which model is better when I was taking the Metro North the other day. Anthropic just released their latest model that was supposed to be so dangerous that they would never release it to humanity. And here we are 2 months later, it's in our hands, right? But what we're really here to talk about today is really the question that's beneath all of that, right? Is what's driving that FOMO, the fear and everything. And what that really is about is how do we prepare people for an AI-enabled future, right? How do we help people adapt, grow, and thrive as work continues to evolve? And I'm personally very excited about this conversation because I had a chance to catch up with Stephanie and speak with her last week, and she just completely changed the way I think about AI. Because her perspective is it's not primarily a technology challenge. She views it as a people challenge. So I'm really excited to have her. Stephanie, thank you for joining us. I'm very excited for today's conversation.
Thank you, Sultan, and everyone for being here. And it's a pleasure because, this is obviously something that I'm very passionate about. So please feel free to ask any questions in the chat as we go along. And yeah, let's go in.
All right, let's jump in. You know, there's no better place to start than the big picture question, right? So everybody's talking about AI, but in your view, what are organizations getting wrong about preparing their workforce for an AI-enabled future?
So the thing is, like, I think like we're getting things wrong because you said it yourself at the beginning. The FOMO that is around is huge. So I see a lot of organizations struggling to even think what are the type of skills that they should be looking for when they're hiring, for example. They are just buying licenses like ChatGPT licenses or Copilot courses, and like following all the influencers on LinkedIn that have these prompt bolts of like they start with this prompt, so then you get magic results. The reality is that is not as that. So there is this is not don't take it out of like from me, take it from the actual experts. So we have, for example, Berkeley University, in collaboration with the California Management Review, they created the 6 principles of human AI collaboration, let's say, how to design intelligent organizations. These principles, in a nutshell, are addition, so like adding these tools, the relevance of these tools, how substitution plays part in this, diversity, collaboration, and explanation as well of these tools. So then there is an element of education as well. So I think like instead of like when we talk about preparing organizations for the future of AI, thinking about what is like kind of a check that I can do in my list, kind of like, oh, Excel training, check. First aid, check. Like AI, check. Like it cannot be another check, because it's so deeply embedded into how it's changing our behavior as individuals and a society that we really need to come up with more like smarter frameworks. This is just one of them. So I think we need to start from there.
Yeah, and you know, I have personally been guilty of putting DM me in the LinkedIn comments to get the latest AI playbook. So
Uh,
guilty, guilty as charged. But something you said something interesting, and this came up in our conversation last week, is you kind of made this comparison to Excel, which I thought was really interesting. And our co-founder Adam, in fact, did his entire home renovation planning in Excel, right? He mapped out his entire home. So what I'm saying by that is it's such a ubiquitous tool, right? And you really changed the way I think about AI because you said, look, you made this comparison to Excel, and that we should look at AI almost more like more almost like a little bit like Excel, where it's not about the tool, it's not about necessarily about Claude or Chat GPT, man, or whatever Manus or whatever else is out there, but it's really like digging into that framework. So how how do we think, like, what is that framework, and how should first of all, how should employees that are in the job market looking for a job say, like, okay, I'm gonna upskill myself so that I can use any tool no matter what I'm dropped into? And then how should organizations start thinking about a framework that enables their team to go with the latest model that the executive team just happens to choose?
Okay, so unpacking this, one of my favorite questions, because I discuss this a lot on my LinkedIn, and actually, just quick disclosure, I saw a post yesterday that it really like fired something inside me. Like, no, let's stop with this, because it's just like, this is my tool stack, so then you are AI ready. Come and AI, and I'll send you the tool. And I just said, please, let's stop with this, because honestly, this is something that I used to do as well, a few years back, because there was like lots of different tools and none of them were really good at multiple things at the same time. So you have to use kind of like a tool stack. But with frontier models, to be honest, most of these tools are completely redundant right now. So
Mhm.
I think one of the main mistakes is to think that one tool is going to solve everything, and controlling that tool, like I said, the exam of Excel, like controlling Excel will help you succeed at your accounting job. Well, controlling Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT will help you. Like, is not that like that. So I think instead of like thinking in terms of tools, we need to start reframing and thinking about in terms of architecture. So what is architecture? You start thinking about layers. You start thinking about orchestration. You start thinking about organization. What are the type of questions that you're asking? What are the type of problems? How can you identify these problems? And so it's more like, imagine mini chief operating officers. So people who start understanding organizational structure, bottlenecks, and critically thinking what could be some smart ways of resolving this, documenting all of that. That's it. That is the foundational layer. The foundational layer is primarily human. And I think, like, when we talk about AI literacy, you don't even need people who are, who know how to use cloud code, because that is something that can be trained on. But having the wit on understanding where the problems lie, what is like how to architect and define these different structures, the different workflows. I think that is much more valuable and interesting, and ultimately having a person who is willing to think and question AI actively. So I would go back to human skills first, and then we will move to specific like hard skills of using tools, but it's irrelevant because, I mean, Claude, yes, they have a new model. Way next week, probably OpenAI is going to release ChatGPT
Yeah.
5.6. So what we're doing here, like, what are we evaluating here? It's not possible because Excel doesn't update like that in this
Yeah.
same pace. And then we have skills, and then we have agentic or orchestrations, and then we have file structure, and then we have evaluation metrics, and then we have like a bunch of other things that keep coming and coming and coming. So these things, because they change that much, the first foundational layer is who you are as a person and how can you deal with this technology, and then from there we start building the blocks.
Mhm. Yeah, so it sounds like from an organizational perspective, if I can kind of just throw back at you what I heard and then maybe walk through an example, is what I kind of heard is like, hey, look, like, sort of whether you use Claude or ChatGPT, it's a little bit irrelevant, right? If you look at your organization and you kind of look at where there are issues or problems that perhaps aren't being addressed by, let's say maybe a human employee today. Like, let's see if we can, have an AI agent sort of address that, right? So does that kind of sound like kind of on the same lines as what you were thinking? And then how does it look like? Are there any organizations doing this today? And if so, what does that look like in practice?
Okay, different things. Let me go back to the approach, the
Hmm.
strategic approach. Something that we have observed is that instead of being like jobs being completely replaced, that was the fear that many people continue to discuss, which is not that black and white, by the way. Um, we see skills within jobs getting uh, not replaced but changed because of AI. So effectively, if you are in marketing, you're gonna see clearly that there are things that if you are AI literate that you can design so then AI agents can take over. So then you the quality of work try to aims at excellence. I think like thinking about how specific skills within my job I can delegate it to AI is definitely an interesting approach. But also going beyond that, I think like once you realize the potential that AI has beyond large language models like ChatGPT, is very interesting. So I wanted to give you an example of something that happened super randomly. I was in a restaurant last week, uh, and I was in Serbia, and then people next to me were talking in Serbian. I had no idea what they were saying, but I understood ChatGPT. So I went like, "Ha!" and I smiled, and they were like the most friendliest people you can imagine. They pulled my table closer to them so that I can sit with them, and I end up talking with government officials from Serbia and some businessmen who were apparently like the chief operating officer of one of the biggest recycling companies in the world, basically. So they were discussing how the problems that they have basically when they receive a cargo of different metals for recycling, understanding what is like how much there is iron, how much there is stainless steel, how much there is copper, like the distribution of materials. They have drones, they have cameras, they have the data, and still they can figure it out. And I see it super clearly. And he said, like, well, but you could train an AI model on something that's called anomaly detection. So basically, you could identify that everything is wrong, but one specific thing that is the metal that you are interested in recycling. You can do that through computer vision, which is a type of AI that analyzes images. That is a technology that use self-driving cars, for example. And I mean, it's expensive, but it's not like incredibly crazy expensive as training a proprietary model with like whatever. So they were super interested because it's like, wow, why no one have told us this before? You know, like we have a technical team and they haven't. And it's because like if we limit AI literacy to use this tool so that you can write animal faster, you know, like we are missing out in the real potential that this has. So obviously we have to put layers, we have to start somewhere. But what I'm saying is that we need first to start with the capacity of creative thinking, you know, that because that is very human. Then we educate ourselves of like we get familiar with certain tools, and then we try to explore what are some unexplored territory where we can use this creative thinking to apply AI to.
Hmm. I see. So it's if I hear you, it's kind of like finding those problems that perhaps humans can't even solve at this moment, right? Like what person is going to be able to say, oh, there's an anomaly there, there's more iron or something is a little bit off. So really finding those before we move into the value stream of like, hey, like we could start, don't want to say replacing jobs, but hey, this is how it fits into marketing. And
Yeah.
and and that kind of brings me to my like sort of my next question, which is going to the employee level, right? So if it kind of sounds like so going back to your marketing example, I'm a marketer, right? Maybe I offload all these autonomous tasks to AI, right? So then where does the skill go in terms of value stream? Is it a marketer making decisions, making more creative judgment calls? Like where does that skill go to? And if I'm a marketer and I know that this is coming, like what skills should I be honing and really upskilling on?
So here's where I would like to start talking about the AI mindset
Okay.
thinking, because the AI mindset is where precisely AI can help me solve this issue. Um, there are different ways, by the way, of evaluating how individuals are perceiving, AI adoption. But we can talk about that later if it's useful, because I think there are like some interested differences between gender, for example, in adoption of AI. But going back to your point, I think like if I'm a marketer, where I would start is like, okay, I'm now the director of my orchestra, and I have little components that are specialized that I have built myself, that I know within my work are essential. I have the one that plays the violin, and the one that plays the trumpet, and the one that who plays the drums. Everyone essential to create a symphony. And the same thing I see it with agentic flows or orchestration of agents. This is why it's called orchestration, by the way. You have
Hmm.
the architecture in the middle that is the human deciding how these the roles get assigned. You have then multiple sub agents, everyone specialist in one specific thing. One, in the case of marketing, let's say that is really, really good at researching, so it's going to just research a sentiment analysis on blog spots in Facebook and Reddit, for example. Then we're going to have another one who is going to analyze competitors. And so it's still the same research, but why overcrowd one, like the main violinist, with what the violoncello should be looking like? That they are very similar, but they operate in different tunes. So we try to assign specific roles to specific members of this orchestra that I know are important for my role. And then when I start directing the symphony, it's just like when I have a workflow. So it's just like, where do I want to get towards? Let's say that I want to start a new newsletter campaign. So this is literally, I'm explaining what I use, because I'm not a marketer. So it's just like, okay, but I understand the steps. So how can I, with no marketing experience, deploy a team of marketing agents? So, okay, I want to start my newsletter. So I will have the one that exactly does research for competitors, the research for my target audience. What are at their stake? Where are their pain points? One that like I'm subscribed to several newsletters, so that pulls the newsletters out of my email, read them, and see the structure, and takes the best points. So then it takes ideas and inspirations of what bigger brands are already using that work better. And then after that, I have another one that I will start with the copyright. And the copyright that is SEO optimized. So then we have the SEO audit that is going to check all the copies. Then you have the one that is the creative assets one. So it will pull images from my gallery and create the images. And then you have a document that composes everything pretty well together, and kind of like some success metrics that will be like I call it the manager. So the manager defines what success looks like. When it's not successful, it knows, it analyzes the whys, and then it self-improve for the next time. So it's not that, I mean, I still change things, obviously. Like I will read and say like, this doesn't really sound like me, so I'll change like one or two phrases. But the role, it kind of changed, because instead of me being the person writing the whole thing and structuring the newsletter and designing the campaign and so on, I'm the one deciding basically on the roles of agents, based on one specific business objective that I have. So I've elevated myself as the conductor of this orchestra, as the main, like the lead strategist, because I'm tied to business objectives. And then with the roles, what is the task specifically that I'm looking for?
Got it. Got it. That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like you're even if you're an IC, an individual contributor, you are the specialist of your skill, and that skill is made up of a bunch of little tasks, but you are the specialist at it. So you kind of play the orchestra, tell them how to play, and then the outcome, you're essentially accountable for that. That
Exactly.
so then how do like organizations get their workforce ready for this, right? I mean, I think what I see in organizations when we talk to people is like everybody's more focused on, you know, more about kind of what you said before is the tools of like, ChatGPT, Claude, or whatever else may be the next hottest thing coming out, whatever next playbook is going to be hot on LinkedIn. How does an organization encourage and just say, you know what? Don't focus on the tool agnostic, focus on how you work, what is your work made up of, and then how you can build that framework so that you essentially either have more capacity or you elevate yourself to a more strategic level.
Yeah, so I think this is a part of the AI mindset training. So the mindset training should be about thinking about systems. So how to think, and I think for that, by the way, is interesting for people who are curious. No, you don't have to learn how to code if you don't want to, but for people who are interested, understanding the logic of code, like this logical thinking, might be helpful. But is if you don't are not interested at all, we have creative people in humanities, that is also fine. But what I'm saying is like there is a beautiful opportunity to think about the bigger picture. So before we were really, really focused on specialists, like who can be the best like newsletter marketer out there. I think now we are thinking more in terms of generalists. So like who can see the bigger picture? Where are we going? What is a success? What success looks like? And then this person is able to like to orchestrate or direct the multiple roles. Is a person who understands the nuances of the little things. So this is where I think still specialist role it is like, I mean, having that domain expertise is definitely fantastic, because you can like kind of like train these AI models in a way that will perform just a regular prompt of like act as a marketer. That, by the way, is a terrible way of prompting. So, so yeah, like I think that we need to start with the training on thinking about systems, thinking about success criteria, thinking about like the bigger picture. Then from there, moving into okay, how do I translate this into an AI adoption strategy? So whatever is your a assistant, ChatGPT, Claude, there are other things, by the way, that they are not both of them. They're open source models for people who are a bit more mindful about privacy. So once you've selected your tool stack, let's say, it's just okay. Now we start thinking about structures that is basically file structures. So the way that AI agents work is like they read one file, that is one file, a text file, let's say, and inside this file there is a bunch of instructions, and that's it. There is no agent, like magical agent that requires. I mean, there is in the back there is something very deeply technical happening. But us, we don't have to care about that. We just have to care about the files. Like what is the information that is inside the file? And that can be defined by the role of the specialist. So yeah, first thinking about systems, and second thinking about how to communicate that to the computer.
Yeah, that's great advice. I forget the name of the author. There's a fantastic book out there called Thinking in Systems.
Hmm.
It's by this Harvard scientist. I think she passed away in the early 2000s. I will send it. I will send it along. But it's a fantastic book for anybody who's looking to understand or learn about systems. Do you recommend any books to kind of, because it sounds like if you want to thrive in the next age of AI, instead of learning the tools, you should start thinking in systems. Meaning, like if I do this in marketing, how's that going to impact my sales qualified leads all the way down the funnel, right? So it's no longer about I make the best newsletter in the world, and it's more about like I understand how this flows through and I understand the impact downstream, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's totally about that. I actually most of of my reference on thinking about systems, I thought on the book that you're referring to. I'm
Ah,
looking at it because I was trying to remember the name. Is Donatella Meadows, I
yes.
think. Yeah,
Yep, that's right. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that's the
yeah.
one.
Yeah. I read this a while ago, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. The other one that I thought is not so much about thinking in systems, but is about organizational structure to prompt or to promote innovation. because the other thing is like, okay, we think about systems, but we need to be creative, like to find these like little nuances, like the little things. So it's called The Fearless Organization, the book. I really liked it because it talks about how to create this environment that promotes creative expression. It talks about great examples like how Pixar or Google operate to find their like moonshot ideas, and how ideas don't come because like, well, they are of course they are fantastic people working there, but it's also about collaboration, about integration, about management, how management enables being being able to give feedback in a more direct way. So I think it's interesting because AI is a mirror to our world. It's great at finding patterns. Humans can have the creative and ethical side, oversight of these things. So I think it's interesting to see it that way. You know, I don't remember who said this specifically. I think it was like the CEO of Anthropic or one of these guys, and I really liked it because he gave an interesting example of like how AI works. So AI is not smart, at all. It can be pretty dumb. It's a probabilistic machine. It looks like it's smart. Of course, it's quite impressive, and of course, it can help us do fantastic things. But it's just kind of like predicting the next thing that it should come later, like the next word. For example, if you say the sky is, probably will say blue because it had read thousands of times that the sky is blue. It doesn't understand the concept of blue or the concept of sky, at least yet. So, because it works like this CEO was explaining that probably your nephew, like your 6-year-old nephew, will be smarter in a way of figuring out how to like do the shoelaces or like made a bed for the first time than AI doing the same, because AI needs references from the past. Therefore, there is no creativity in that. It's just prediction. So we still humans conserve that. And I think the idea is to enhance that and to take the opportunity of using AI for the low-level tasks, the day-to-day things that precisely shutter our creativity so that we can scaffold our thinking.
Yeah, very deep thoughts. No, that's great. That's you just made me go somewhere else because I was thinking about my 1-year-old and I was thinking about how she kind of comes to life with consciousness, and then it was like very similar as you teach things to AI, it becomes smarter, very similar to like a human that's just getting ready, getting ready for or going into consciousness. I have Victoria's on, so that's my cue. But I have one last question for you, Stephanie. And I think this is a very important one. You've done a lot of work through She AI in terms of closing that gender gap. And I think this has been an issue for as long as not just tech, but in a lot of industries of this gender gap. So talk to me a little bit about that. Like, what are you guys doing? How are you guys trying to close that?
So we realized that the attitudes of AI adoption for women were quite different than for men. When we did the first round of research, we found that women were adopting 3 times less AI than men. That was 2 years and a half ago. Now the gap has reduced, so we are almost catching up. But it's interesting to understand the why. When you ask people, particularly women, why are they not integrating AI in their work, they attribute it as potential cheating. They feel is unethical. They feel it's unethical also in the sense of energy, like they are conscious about the environment. They are concerned that about the results, like if there is trustworthiness enough to rely on AI, let's say. So there is more like a skepticism for women than for men in this case. I think it's obviously a generalization. There are exceptions, but this is what we've encountered. It's important to understand that the goal is not to create an AI first organization, but something that I call the AI ready organization. So AI first organizations will prepare you to automate everything, deploy AI agents, and let's do AI in everything. That is a problem because right now AI is subsidized, the cost is really low compared to where definitely is coming. So at certain point will be cheaper just to hire humans, as it has always been the case, than deploying AI. So AI first is not the goal. But AI ready means like, okay, where are the opportunities? When to use it, when not to use it? And I think women have here an interesting approach to this. So whilst we keep pushing the agenda of like putting AI to everything so that we go faster, this is going to lead to a lot of like mistakes in AI adoption. And I think we can take on board these more the skeptical views of AI and like to do a more like soft, let's say, approach to integration that is still innovative but not over reliant and dependent on the tools. I mean, tool agnostic basically. So you can go independently, and if Claude stops working, nothing happens. Like we continue to function. So I think that is like one of the key things here. About the gender gap specifically and what we're doing, we are then enhancing these attitudes as some cool attributes that are necessary for teams and transforming, because there is a very like thin line between being anxious and being excited. So, like transforming that mindset of like, you don't have to be anxious about this. This is good. So take on this criticism and transform it in constructive critics so that we can build reliable systems. But we build the systems. We don't stop innovation because we're scared. So this is one of the things that we are doing. Then second, what I'm doing now with Lyra, the new company, is to educate women on AI. So then companies have access to women who are AI ready, like I was saying. So that is like one of the things as well to close that gender gap in adoption. And yeah, I think like we're living in exciting times. So one of the things that I try to do is just to inspire women to follow along and say like, hey, it's not that bad. It's exciting. There could be a promising future. It's not like the robots are going to take over. We are in an interesting period of history to be the ones, like taking the reins and shaping that future together.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stephanie. I have so many more questions, but I think we might have to save it for a part 2 in the future. Victoria, I know you came on a little bit earlier. Do we have any audience questions? Do we have time left for audience questions? I know we went over a little bit.
Yeah, we did. Oh, what a fantastic conversation. If you do have any questions, please do drop them in the chat, and we can take a couple. But I do have a few questions of my own while we wait, if that's all right. A few of them you've answered already about AI and women in the field, which was fantastic. Another question I had about kind of responsible AI adoption. What is the line between kind of smart AI integration and over-reliance on AI? I think you just started to touch on it. And how do we help employees find that fine line?
Well, this is one of the debates that are still ongoing, hence the EU AI Act. You have examples like Article 14, I believe, is the one that explains that what is the risks, the different risk levels of AI. So when we talk about, like AI adoption, we have to think about like, what are we doing? Are we automating emails, or are we selecting who we hire? Are we, replying a message on like the location of a package, or are we detecting cancer? So then it kind of like depends on the case. We will have different risks levels, let's say. So this is one thing to take into consideration. This is part of AI governance, and actually have a guide about that. If people are interested, I can also like share it with you guys so that you can reshare it with your community. And then the other thing is thinking on, obviously understanding how the systems are built so that we can spot potential biases precisely on the thing of recruiting. Women in general are advised to buy large language models to negotiate salary less, like 20% less than men. Exactly the same prompt, but it just happens because we're women. And the same thing with recruitment. It's small things like that it changed the attitude. So I think we need to be careful with that in inform people on when they are using AI models, how these systems recommend based on like the role, the person that we're talking, the subject that is in the prompt as well. And then the last thing, before I forget, let's say we have the EU Act, bias awareness, evaluation. So this is for agentic orchestration. So agentic behavior means that it has agency. So it has a goal. We don't know how they are going to get to this goal. They just get to the goal. This is extremely dangerous because they can delete stuff, they can buy stuff, they can destroy stuff in the way just to get to the goal. So it's setting up specific rules of evaluations of like the step-by-step of how an agent should behave is part of this AI governance that we need to take care of.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. Thanks so much for that. And going back to sort of women and adoption of AI and it lagging behind for all the factors that you kind of spoke about. What do you have any advice for women, or what's the first step that they can take today? So maybe women that are feeling skeptical or unsure or a bit anxious about, the big word of AI.
The best way is open it and ask it questions. I think it sounds quite basic, but it is true. Just start exploring, and then I think it's good to find a community space. This is why like Fernanda also is doing the Croissant coffee in Barcelona. I also have my own community as well, or like we can just check on LinkedIn, try to find these spaces with like when you have a friend. Let's just say let's explore this thing together and see what happens beyond and pushing it forward. Like let's see where we can get to. Very important. Do not share private information in these chats. Is not private. Is never private. Even when they say that it's private, is not. Like they can use this to train their models. They can use this to set you legally binding for stuff. It's extremely dangerous for sharing company data and stuff like that. So let's not do that. But you can still push boundaries for interesting things, like asking it to build dashboards or to build websites or to explain you things in different ways. And an interesting way that I use it, for example, is I have something that's called the Socratic method skill. So basically, I ask it to make me reflect. So instead of giving me the answers, it's programmed in a way that makes me think deeply about one specific problem so I can come up with my own answer. And it's kind of like having a mentor, and is great. So kind of like say, exploring these little things make you lose the fear and discover interesting use cases.
Wow, fantastic. That is a really, really great advice, how to make you think a bit deeper about questions instead of just getting the answers. I'm going to use that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you touched on your communities and sharing information. So how can people connect with you and where can people find you?
Definitely on LinkedIn. I share a lot of things. I also have my own newsletter where I share all these tips. I have also access to the WhatsApp group. So then in there we chat, I share news, stuff like that. So that's great. And I also have a Substack where I write articles more in reflection of these topics that we were discussing. So I'll share some links about that, but I'm happy to connect with everyone on LinkedIn anyway and answer any questions that were left.
Oh, brilliant. Fantastic. And we'll share all those links when we send up some follow-up material to that as well. So yeah, just conscious of everyone's time and being respectful. So thank you again. Thanks so much for joining us for the brilliant conversation. I found it really insightful and really helpful in my work as well. And I hope everybody else did too. Thank you to those that attended. We'll send out more information and look out for more webinars that we've got coming up in the next couple of weeks. And that's it from us. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.